The man walked into the museum, but was stopped by a guide. The guide even told him a big secret, that the moon had drifted off its orbit and was about to crash down. The man did not believe a word of it, so he called security and had the guide removed. Afterwards, he did not pay any attention to what the guide said. However, it wasn't long before the man found out that the guide's prediction was confirmed to be true. After precise calculations, NASA announced that in 3 weeks, the moon would once again approach the Earth. At first, NASA, in order to avoid causing social panic, decided to hide this information. However, the news was still spread to the world through a text message from Eddie. Soon, global society fell into panic. People began hoarding supplies, and many chose to leave the cities. At this point, Edward saw the news and finally realized the severity of the crisis. He remembered the information Eddie had left behind and immediately rushed to search the museum's trash bins. Fortunately, the janitor had not yet taken out the trash during this period, and they found the materials and footage Eddie had left behind, quickly finding Eddie based on the address in the materials. However, their actions were still too late. The seawater had already started flooding the city due to the moon's gravitational pull. Edward quickly ordered everyone to evacuate to higher ground. At this time, Eddie was still watching the rising seawater and was suddenly swept away by the water. Unfortunately, Eddie couldn't swim, and Edward immediately rescued him. As they were resting for a moment, the door was suddenly barged open, and they were taken to NASA by a group of soldiers. It turned out that 2 days earlier, NASA had discovered a massive crater on the moon's surface through satellite images, and they believed this was the cause of the disaster. Therefore, they thought of Edward, the astronaut who had returned from the moon 10 years ago. During that mission, all the astronauts had failed except for Edward, who was the only one to return successfully. After the mission failure, Edward reported the incident, but NASA thought he was fabricating lies to escape responsibility and ultimately fired him. Not only that, but Edward's wife also divorced him because of his dismissal and took their son with her. 10 years later, NASA finally realized that Edward was not lying. At this point, they hoped Edward could help them and save everything. The director repeatedly begged Edward for help, but Edward began to hesitate. Eddie also hoped that he would lend a hand,